Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Hey, thank you so much for joining us here on our YouTube channel. This is episode number 973. Well, I've got a great interview for you today. Now, this is with an FFA student, and normally when I interview FFA students, my interviews are about 25 minutes long. I think the entire interview on this one's about 45 minutes long, which I allow myself the leeway to do from time to time. But man, we went down a rabbit hole at the beginning of this interview talking about hazelnuts of all things that I did not expect to go down. And we spent a good 20 minutes just learning about hazelnuts and hazelnut farming, and then finally got into the SAE project and learning all about that. I'm going to be speaking with a very, very amazing student today. Miss Dresen Ferschweiler is coming on the show, and man, she is going to educate us about a lot of stuff going on over in Western Oregon. I think you're really going to enjoy it, and we're going to get it started for you right now. Dresen, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, you bet. So I know we're airing this in January, but you are officially my last interview before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too, and Happy New Year, I guess.
Yeah, Happy New Year too. Yeah, that's true. You're my last interview before New Year's, I think. So yeah, Happy New Year's to you, and great to speak with you. So let's find out a little bit about you. Where are you speaking to us from today? Where are you at?
So I go to Gervais High School, but I live in a town called Silverton. Not in town, but in Silverton,
okay,
Oregon.
Okay, so that's in the Willamette Valley of Oregon, over in Western Oregon, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
We're pretty much in the middle of the Willamette Valley.
Okay.
A great hazelnut producing area.
Okay, hazelnuts, excellent. I'm trying to think if I've ever eaten hazelnuts. Now, I'm not too far away from you. I'm over near Boise, Idaho, so I'm only like 7 hours away by car, but or maybe 8. But I don't think I've ever eaten a hazelnut. Okay, well,
Really?
Yeah, but that's a rabbit hole we don't need to go down right now. But anyway, so are you living?
Have you ever had Nutella?
I have had Nutella. Yes.
Then you've eaten hazelnut.
Oh, okay. Very good. Man, I've got a weakness for Nutella. That stuff's good.
I know, right?
Yeah, that stuff's good. Okay, so I've had hazelnuts. Okay, very good. Now, are you on a farm, or are you in town, or maybe like something kind of in the middle of those two?
So my family lives on 30 acres. We have about 20 of it is hazelnuts.
Okay.
And then we have about 30 sheep and like 10-ish goats that we have on the rest of it, where we also lease some land like right next to us. So for the sheep and the goats, we have probably about 15-ish acres of pasture land. And then we farm about 60 acres total of hazelnuts, but only, again, 20-ish are here on our home farm.
Got it. Okay. And how long has this been part of your family legacy? The farming, the hazelnuts, the livestock, all of that?
So my mom grew up on a farrow to finish hog operation, and my dad and my grandpa have both farmed hazelnuts. My grandparents live on a century farm that before that it was my great grandpa's, and he had cherries and walnuts on it.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as he passed away, or shortly after, all that came out and they put in hazelnuts, and we've been farming those on off or the whole time since then.
Okay.
And then the sheep and stuff came into my family with my mom marrying my dad. So we've had hazelnuts on my dad's side of the family for quite a while.
Okay.
And then my mom has always just been into the livestock side of things. And so those meshed, and we have a combination of both. But the sheep are definitely newer to my family. The livestock is newer to my family than the hazelnuts are.
Got it. Okay. So mom brought the livestock, and dad, he had been farming permanent crops. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, got it. Okay. Now, so I want to ask you about the hazelnuts. So do you have them in orchards, or do they? Man, I'm ignorant about this. You are going to laugh at me, but I'm just going to expose myself as ignorant here. Now, where I grew up in the Central Valley of California. So down in the middle of the state, kind of really fertile area. And that's all gone over to walnuts and almonds now. So there's tons of orchards down there. But I've spent a lot of time in Texas, and there's a lot of people who just have pecan trees growing, not necessarily in orchards. They just got pecan trees and they harvest. But with the type of acreage you're talking about, I'm assuming you guys have them in orchards and all organized and everything like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It makes it a lot easier to spray, to prune, to do everything.
Okay.
Harvest them, because once they fall on the ground, you got to blow them into windrows with the sweeper, what we call it, a machine, and it just puts them into a big, if you've seen a hay windrow, same concept. It's just a bunch of nuts.
Okay.
And then go over it with the picker, and that will blow all the holes which they're in. They come in like a nut cluster hole, and they fall out of that eventually, but some of them you still need to blow the leaves and the holes and some sticks and stuff out. So that's what that does. A bunch of big fans, really.
So with the hazelnuts, then to harvest the hazelnuts, do you shake the trees like they do with almonds?
Nope, they just fall naturally on their own, and depending on the variety, they'll start like mid to end of September, and then there's some later varieties that don't drop anything until almost November. And so you kind of have to pair up what kind of tree you have, because if you have some that are done dropping nuts in September, and then you got, I don't know, 5 or 6 pollinizer trees which pollinate the other ones that don't drop anything until November, it really doesn't do you any good to go back through and use fuel costs and stuff to pick those. So you got to pick and choose your kinds.
Got it. Okay.
And they just fall naturally, but that's typically how it happens.
Okay. And then where you're at over in Western Oregon, the climate's quite a bit different than where I'm at in Idaho. Do you have to irrigate there, or are you able to grow these orchards in hazelnuts all dry land?
So it'll depend on who you talk to. Some of these newer varieties need some water when they're babies. I know people are putting in new orchards, and OSU, Oregon State University, is recommending that they also put in different kinds of irrigation systems. If you were to talk to my grandparents and my dad, they still use some of the older varieties, which are a little more blight. They're not as blight resistant, but they don't take water. The old timers never watered their orchards. It was just a lot more work than it was worth. Now we have different techniques. You can just set up like drip irrigation systems, and it constantly waters these newer varieties that are more blight resistant, and they produce either bigger or more hazelnuts. But you got to, again, pick and choose your kinds. Do you want to go with the less maintenance of putting in irrigation, which if you're already putting in an orchard, it's sometimes easier to just go and do the whole thing. But if your operation is set up like ours is, where we have trees that are almost 100 years old and have no irrigation systems, no extra maintenance like that, it's kind of, it's easier to just put out like a big irrigation gun for the first 2 or 3 years, and then call it good, because they'll be fine after that.
Okay.
But no, it depends on the operation you're talking about for irrigating these guys.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. 100-year-old orchard. At what point do they start to diminish in productivity?
I guess they really don't. I mean, eventually you're going to have to replace them all out. So there's very few trees that are actually 100 years old themselves because of the blight thing. It's fungus in the trees that'll kill them off. And then, just natural causes, storms and stuff. You end up just rotating out all these trees. But they live a long time. They don't, I think, have a life to them. It just, things will happen to them and then they come out.
Okay. And you had mentioned Nutella earlier. Or does your family, do they contract grow hazelnuts for Nutella?
Well, we take ours to a processing plant that's run by George Packing Company.
Okay.
And they sell to different markets. They've been working through the tariff thing, trying to get hazelnuts to go to China.
Okay.
They're pretty big in that. They work some pretty good deals for us. And because of that, they have pretty good grower returns from what they get. If their profit margin is higher than what they thought, they give it back to the farmers. They also bought out another hazelnut packing company called Northwest Hazelnut. And so they own both of those, but they package and sell them through those companies. And that's where we take our product.
Huh. Man, this is so interesting. This is a great surprise. I was not expecting to talk about hazelnuts with you, but I'm learning a ton here and didn't even know. I didn't even know that over in Oregon that you were, you and other farmers like you guys were growing hazelnuts. That's really fascinating. Okay, so
yeah, Oregon actually produces 99% of the U.S.'s hazelnuts and 5% of the world's hazelnuts.
No kidding. I had no idea. I learn something every time I do an interview on this show, which is a lot of the fun, Dresen. So, okay, so let's talk about hazelnuts for a second, a little bit more. So, Nutella, we already talked about, which is very addicting, wonderful stuff. What else are hazelnuts being used for? Are people just consuming them just like you would consume an almond or a walnut? And are they in other products as well?
So I don't know if they're just not very popular. Around here, they're a big thing because everyone grows them.
Okay.
They're everywhere. I think there's like 80,000 acres. Don't completely quote me on that. Here in the Willamette Valley of just hazelnut production.
Okay.
A lot of it is newer, younger orchards, so they're not into full production, producing as much as they can. But we do have a substantial amount of hazelnut growth here. So we all around here know what hazelnuts are. But I've heard that people, I mean, you're in Idaho, and you're not even that far from us, and you're saying you don't know what they are. People, I guess, just don't know too much about them because they're also grown mainly in Spain, Italy, and Turkey. And so they're not very popular throughout the U.S. because they only grow in those kind of tropical-ish climates, these mild climates, is where they really do well. And there's not many like the Willamette Valley in the U.S. So not many people grow them throughout the U.S. or across the U.S. So that kind of helps people not know about them. And then I don't know, we're trying, I know George Packing Company is probably pushing a lot more now to sell them like out of the shell as like almonds and stuff, like just eat them like that, cracked. And then people put them in candy too. But they typically use the hazelnuts from like Turkey and Spain for Nutella because they're smaller kernels. The ones here in Oregon are probably about the size of a gumball at the biggest. And then there's varieties that'll come out and they're very, very, very little. And those ones are what they would grind up and put in for like flavoring and stuff just because they don't look as pretty in candies.
And do you know the history of this? When people first started farming the Willamette Valley, were hazelnuts already growing naturally there, or did somebody bring them in and see if they would grow there, and that's how it got started?
Yeah, I don't know much about that. I would assume they probably had to bring them in from somewhere, and it might have been, I'm just guessing, probably like when fur traders were coming across the ocean, like from Spain, if they were importing stuff from that, they would probably have figured out pretty easily that, hey, these bushy things over here thrive just as
Sure.
well over here because it's relatively the same climate.
Huh.
But yeah, I don't know specifically too much in depth as to when and how hazelnuts showed up over here, but they did, and they do really well.
Well, very interesting. Okay, well, everybody, there is a 15-minute lesson on hazelnuts for you. That's the first time. You know, there's a movie. My friend actually bought it for me and sent it to me and swore that I would die laughing. And I think I've only watched it once, and I was like, why does she think this is so funny? But it's called Best in Show. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or seen it. It's about show dogs or showing dogs or whatever. And it's a comedy. But there's this guy in there who loves nuts, and he just rattles off all these nut kinds the entire time. And I'm sure he brings up hazelnuts. But anyway, I can't stop thinking about that movie as we're talking about hazelnuts. Okay. Okay, very interesting. Well, like I said, I love going down these rabbit holes because I learn something every time I do an interview on this show. Let's talk about FFA. So you're a junior in high school. How long have you been part of the FFA?
I actually started doing the discovery program when I was in 8th grade. So this will be my 4th year in the FFA chapter.
Okay. And I asked everybody why they joined. And you know what? I'm going to ask you. It seems so obvious in talking to you. By the way, as a junior in high school, you have a ton of knowledge about agriculture and farming in your region. Beyond, well, you'd be in the top 5% of students I've interviewed who understand the farming industry that surrounds them. You understand the co-ops, you understand the pricing, the price margins, the profits, the contract, you understand the growing season, how it all gets done, and you understand the international issues that are impacting prices on the crops that you're growing there. You really have a ton of knowledge. And so obviously you very much like and enjoy agriculture. I mean, we haven't even got to what you're doing for your SAE yet. But I'm going to ask you this anyway. Why did you join the FFA?
Well, it was kind of, if you don't join FFA, you're probably going to be disowned. But at the point, I mean, my parents met through FFA,
Okay.
and they served on the same Capital District officer team that I'm serving on now. And FFA is just like part of my family on both sides. It doesn't matter. Okay. My grandpa was in FFA. He went to Gervais. My dad was in FFA. He went to Gervais. I'm currently attending Gervais, and I'm in their FFA chapter. So there's 3 generations there.
Okay.
And then on my mom's side, she has 9 siblings, and basically every one of them that could participate in FFA did.
Wow.
And so the reason I joined FFA was because there was nothing else in school that I wanted to do more. I was that elementary kid, that middle school kid that, when can I do FFA? When can I do 4-H? When can I do this? When can I show animals at the fair? It wasn't always, I'm not old enough to do it. And so as soon as I found out I could do it in 8th grade, I was like, oh, heck yes, sign me up. And so I don't think I was ever more happier in school than when I could finally do the ag classes and FFA and stuff like that. So for me, FFA joining it, it was always I can't wait to do it kind of a thing. It probably would have surprised everyone more if I had not joined FFA.
Well, that's great. And that's kind of what I expected to hear from you. But I like your first answer, which is, sweetheart, you're in 8th grade now, and you don't have to join FFA. But if you don't, we're not quite sure where you're going to live. I like that answer. That's a funny answer.
Pretty much.
Very funny. Well, so how many FFA advisors do you have at Gervais? Or Gervais, excuse me.
Just one, Megan Dilson.
Megan. Okay, well, thank you very much for acknowledging her. We always like to do that. We can finally talk about, and by the way, I know your mom's in the room, and she's the livestock person in this family, and I've been talking about nothing but hazelnuts. So before she wrings my neck through the screen here, we're going to talk about livestock, and we're going to talk about your supervised agricultural experience, because after all, that is how we found out about you. You've got a neat little business going, and I want to talk about that. So let's do that. Tell everybody what your SAE is and what you've been doing.
So my first main SAE started out as sheep production, entrepreneur sheep production. So I have Oh, geez. 23 adult sheep, and they're lambing right now. So I got a total of probably about 30 of my own sheep right now. And I still have 5 or 6 ewes left to lamb in the end of December, 1st of January. And then I have 8 more of a different breed that are due at the end to mid-February.
Okay.
And without this sheep entrepreneur experience SAE project, I really wouldn't have gotten into the halter side of things. So I'm showing these sheep, and I started out in 4-H, and I was showing them, and every 4-H kid that starts out, they really don't know what they're doing. At least I didn't. And so I was, you go to the local feed store, you get your bucket, you get your halter, you get this and that, and you use that stuff for the first year. And then as you do more, you kind of learn some tips and tricks, and you talk to people, and then you're like, oh yeah, that does work better. Why am I doing this? And that's kind of what happened for me with the sheep and this halter thing. I was using the local feed store halters, and I didn't know any different. I didn't have anything specifically wrong with them. I'm never going to go out and say these are the worst halters ever. You should never use them. But there was just little things about them that I didn't like. And so it actually happened. I was at maybe my fourth show ever with my sheep. I can't really tell you how I placed, just because it was a long time ago. It must not have been a very significant show, other than I think it was a participation prize. I got this different type of halter. It was made out of a rope, and like a rock climbing rope, instead of this polyester kind of thing that you can get basically everywhere. You go on Amazon and they're like $2, or you go to the local feed store and they're like 4.5. And it just surprised me how much more I liked this rock climbing type rope. And I think the local FFA chapter around that show actually made it and donated it as prizes, like participation prizes for all the kids that walked in the ring. And so I ended up with one of those, and I really liked it. And I got looking at it and the way they made it, and I'm like, this wouldn't be all that hard to replicate. And so I don't know why or how I came upon doing it. I'm just that kid, I guess, that, hey, why not try it? So I went out and I bought 50 feet of rope or whatever it was, which you can get like 5 or 6 halters out of that. And I got the other parts for it, and I made one. And I was like, oh, look, Mom, look, I made another halter. And she's like, don't you have halters? What? Okay, cool. And so then I went to another sheep show event thing, and I saw the same type of halter, same rope type of halter, and it had a noseband on it. But this noseband they made for it was like, fleecy. I don't know if you've ever seen those, like, it's like a fleece. I don't know. Whatever. It was like a fuzzy noseband, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I got looking at the halter a lot closer, and it was a vendor. I never ended up buying that type of halter, just because I got looking at the noseband, and I'm like, it's really cool and all, but I don't know my experience with that fleecy material. If it was like a blanket or something, it stretches out really easily. Not to mention, I took one of those kind of blankets outside, and yeah, there's a lot of hay chaff, and let's say that thing was never allowed back in the house again. And I was like, I don't think I want that type of halter. It was a really cool idea. I liked the noseband idea, and I liked that type of halter rope. So what I did was I went and I got another type of rope that was a little bit smaller, and it's still a hiking, rock climbing type of rope too. And I put a noseband on the halter I had already made. And I'm like, hey, Mom, look at my halter now. And she's like, oh, that is really cool. And so, like I said, I ended up with like 50 feet of rope because no one wants, it's not cost effective to try to sell like 8 feet of rock climbing rope. It's just not. You're not going to probably find that anywhere. And so I had 5 or 6 of these halters, and I just started putting nosebands on them. And then I started showing them to some of the other people I was showing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I have a bunch of these things now because I was really into it. It turned into like my obsession hobby for a while, and I was only in like 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I was making these. So basically, all my sheep could have a different halter for every day of the week.
Okay.
No one needs that.
Right.
But I had that. And then I started, like I said, showing them to other people that were showing sheep at the time. And they're like, where did you get this? How did you? And then they were like really surprised because I was only a 7th grader. And I'm like, well, I made it. And they're like, you made these? These are really cool. You need to somehow figure out how to sell them. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so then some of our friends started buying them from me. And then there was a couple of different little local shows that I took them to, and people were like, these are cool. These are really cool. And so they were buying them there. And then it got to the point where I kept making them, and I had a whole bunch of them, and I showed them to this one family that shows nationally, and the one girl actually was our state officer last year, the 2019-2020 year, and she's like, these would be an amazing SAE project. You need to start doing these through FFA. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess. And so I signed them up as an SAE project, I think, probably my freshman year. And so then I had to do the online record books with them. And signing in and out of the online record books last fall for national convention, I kept seeing this banner. It was like SAE Spotlight or something.
Uh-huh. And
they wanted non-perishable SAE products to spotlight. And I was just every time I'd log in for the week or whatever I was doing, I was like, oh, the deadline hasn't come yet, I guess. I mean, it's just a couple extra minutes of filling out applications. And I'm like, why not?
Okay.
So I kind of had forgotten I had done it because I had done it like the 2nd or 3rd week they'd started advertising for it. And I don't think I even told my parents or my advisor that I had signed up for this thing. And then it was always in the back of my mind that I had done it, but I'd never, I don't know, whatever. I kind of forgot about it. And then I get this email, and they were only going to pick a few different projects, and mine got picked. And so what they wanted was they purchased our product, and then they had it at the national convention as a prize for a raffle.
Okay.
I didn't actually get to attend national convention, so thank you, Canby FFA, for taking the halters with you. And Miss Patty Abel was their advisor who did that for me because my cousin attends Canby. But they took 5 of the halters that they'd purchased with them down to national convention, and they used them in this SAE Spotlight contest.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, people started to hear about them, and they started, I had set up the Instagram account in, I think, just a couple months before that. And so then they started to contact me through Instagram as to how can we get these? Where do you ship them? How do you order them? Do you have an online thing? And I still currently don't have any online shopping. It's just all been through Instagram.
Okay.
But Highland FFA out of Arizona was the first out-of-state sale I had. And since then, I've sold or shipped halters to, oh geez, I believe it's 11 different states around the country I've shipped halters to, and then I've had some that have had multiple people from that state buy halters, and so it's really only been through Instagram that I've sold these halters, and it all kind of just started from, well, this was a cool thing that I didn't really, and then once I started using these halters on my sheep, I realized I didn't care for the, I guess run-of-the-mill halter that you can get at feed stores so easily. And I was like, this is actually kind of fun getting to make these halters and then sell them to people or show them to people, have them use them.
Well, I want to ask you a couple questions about that. That is an amazing story, the way that all developed and it came about. Okay, so a couple questions for you. Is there a business name that people can look up on Instagram?
So my Instagram is @sheep_halters.
Okay.
And then I don't know, I haven't really named it specifically other than sheep halters.
Well, if people are looking for sheep halters, it's going to take them there. Okay. Okay, so that's kind of the business name or the default business name for now. Now, I wanted to ask you about this. So my daughter shows sheep, and obviously she's got a halter on her lambs, but the moment she's going into the show ring, that halter comes right off, and I hold it for her, and then she goes in and shows sheep. So why? And you've proven the concept already. I just kind of want to reverse engineer this and understand if that's the case. If all a halter is doing is getting your sheep from the pen to the show ring, tying it up while you're blowing it out and cleaning it and doing all of that, and then you're pulling that halter off and going into the show ring, why does it even make a difference what kind of halter you have? And obviously it does. I just want to know why.
So, I mean, obviously walking your sheep around it's not going to matter too much what kind of halter you have there. But when you have them tied to a fence, or you have them in the wash racks, or even if you're just holding the rope, there's a significant difference in the materials you use. Some of it is really slippery.
Okay.
And if you have them tied in a wash rack and it's wet and it's already a slippery material, there's a great possibility that they're going to get away. Not to mention there's sheep out there that love to chew and nibble and pull and be an all-out nuisance. And if they grab a hold of that rope just right and yank it, they're freewheeling it and running around and eating the grain, and then they're sick, and then you have all kinds of other issues. So it'll depend on the type of material or just your personal preference as to what it looks like or how it performs for you as to what type of halter you want to use.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so there's issues in functionality. There's issues in feel, in the way that, I don't know, it doesn't slip out of your hand. Because I understand what you're talking about. Some of those synthetic ones, they kind of have a waxy feel or a waxy finish on them or something like that. It can be a little bit slick. And probably just a difference in just pride in the way it looks. I mean, exhibitors are exhibitors. And even if you're not in the show ring, you're still exhibiting. And the better your stuff looks, the better put together it looks. I think it's part of the overall package. Do you think that plays into it at all?
Oh, yeah, because I've had people order halters. This guy wanted 12 halters, and they had to be black halters with a hot pink noseband.
Okay.
He wanted his entire show string to look uniformed. Okay. And then that way also he could tell which were his halters specifically. If you have a bunch of these generic ones, I know you can buy all the same kind of halter that are the same. But if everyone has this generic type of halter and you lose one, it's kind of hard to tell. And so I've seen people take those and they'll put like ear tags in the back of them, or they'll put some kind of marking system on that. But if you have something that's completely way out there different or completely customized with different colors, you can say, that's my halter. I know that's my halter. Yeah. I have 20 more in my tack pen like that halter.
Well, it's interesting too. If there's a bunch of generic halters out there and they all look the same, somebody might go, "Well, what difference does it make? You pick up the wrong halter, but it's identical to the one that somebody else picked up. What difference does it make?" But if a lamb's got sore mouth or something like that, you could spread that with that halter. You don't want to do that. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a very interesting concept, and I would have never guessed that. Now, what do you sell your halters for?
So if you want some of the abundance stockpiled ones I have already made, those are $7 each.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you want something completely custom, which is not a problem at all, I love making those are $8. And then if you help me out and clean up this pile of rope I have over here by ordering like 5+ or so, we can start talking price breaks. But
okay. And how long does it take you to make one?
From start to finish, if I need to measure out the correct pieces of rope, it'll take me about 10, maybe 15 minutes max to do one.
Very
like start to finish and just ready to put on a sheep.
And you started this in 7th grade? Do I have the timeline correct? Okay, so I want to tell you something. I interview hundreds of people a year. I interview hundreds of FFA students per year, more than that of just people in general per year, all about entrepreneurship in agriculture. And you've got a special just gift. And I can hear it in your story. And that is, as a 7th grader, you looked at those halters with the fancy fleece thing that went over the nose. And instead of looking at it and going, I want one, you looked at it critically and you examined it and you went, this won't work for this reason, and I can make something that's better. And there's a lot of ways that people become entrepreneurs. That's one of the ways where people look at something and they go, no, this could be better and I can make it better. I'm not that way. I wish I was that way. I'm not. I look at things that somebody has made and I go, they must have really researched this and tested it, and who am I to say that it could be done better? And I'll just buy it. You don't look at things that way, and that is a special talent. And combining that with the love and the knowledge you have of agriculture, just like talking about the hazelnuts, I'm very excited for you. I'm eager to see where you go moving forward. It's really cool. Your story is very cool. You're selling in multiple different states, and at this point, your marketing has been entering a contest, the national convention, and then having, for all intents and purposes, kind of a generic Instagram page that just says sheep halters. And that's it. That's what you've done.
Yeah.
That is very cool. You are, and I don't know if you realize this or not, but there's a lot of people out there in the world who are trying to figure out, what could I do? What could I make that would allow me to start a business and work for myself? And they're very jealous of you right now. They're sitting here going, she didn't even have to think about it. It just came to her, and look at how it's developing. I am very excited for you. This is really cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, so now has this led to, so I know you got to be featured at the national convention, which is great. And have you ever been to the national convention at this point?
No, I have.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
before the whole COVID thing, my cousin and I were joking around last year. We're like, even if Gervais doesn't get to go to national convention again, I'll just be an honorary Canby student for the field trip or whatever. And their advisor knows both of us just because I actually show sheep with their advisor at state fair and stuff. And so we're joking around. I'm like, I'll just become an honorary Canby student for the week or whatever. And my advisor was like, okay, whatever. And so we were planning on hopefully going this year, but it didn't happen, and we didn't. But so maybe next year we can go through with our plan, or maybe Gervais will have enough people interested that we can go on our own. Yeah,
I want you to go, and I want you to be able to see where your halters were on display, because it is pretty amazing. So hopefully this year they actually have the in-person convention, and coronavirus is not a factor, and they can do it, because it is unreal. It is absolutely unreal. Okay, well, let me ask you about this. So here you are. You're a junior in high school. You're halfway through your junior year. You got one more year to go after this. And then what's next? What's life look like for you after high school?
Well, I currently am like in love with the vet science contest. I've always loved animals and the vet science side of things, just veterinary medicine in general, taking care of animals. But I don't know how to say this too, I don't know. I'm not really into the cats and dogs. I love the livestock side
Okay.
of things. So clearly I want to be a large livestock vet, but just with this show sheep thing, I've kind of learned about the embryo transfer and AI stuff, which is pretty interesting. I think you had another kid do a podcast on that with his goats. Yeah, that one was I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that one was pretty interesting. And with the sheep and goats, it's not too old, so not as many people are into it. But I'd really be interested in becoming a large livestock vet, and then after that, venturing into the embryo transfer AI techniques with that.
Okay. And with sheep and goats, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I know in our egg classes, we were able to look at AI and stuff in cattle because that's a pretty big thing with the dairies around here. And so actually I had a dairy heifer and I got to watch her be AI'd. That was pretty cool. But I'd really like to do more in the large livestock vet side of things, and then try into the embryo transfer AI stuff.
Interesting. Well, that's great. And yeah, that was very interesting, the interview you're talking about, because doing embryo transfers with goats is a new concept to me. And in interviewing that young man, he was talking about how it is kind of a burgeoning concept and it is coming about. So there's some real opportunity there, I would think. I would assume that it's going to work as well in goats eventually as it does in cattle. And so once that takes off, they're going to need experts that know what they're doing and know how to do it, and can teach others as well. So that's a great idea. Very, very cool idea. Good for you. Well, man, I've got all the confidence in the world that you can make that happen. There's no question in my mind. I had a question earlier that I forgot to ask, but I wanted to ask you this, and this is just something that always drives me nuts, but I understand there's a reason for it. But like I said, where I grew up, in our orchards, they cultivate them. Those orchards, for the most part, are super, super clean. They cultivate all the grass out. Same with our vineyards. They're very, very clean. But as a guy who raises livestock, because I enjoy livestock, I'm always looking at some of the vineyards in the orchards that are not that clean, and they got a bunch of grass growing up in them. And where you're at, you're going to have a lot of grass growing up just off your natural rainfall. Can you guys run your sheep and your goats in a hazelnut orchard, or do you have to protect the trunks of those trees from them nibbling on them?
Oh, in older orchards, it might work, but you don't do it. You can't. I think there's regulations about like the manure and stuff in the orchard.
Okay.
Because they fall. Obviously, the nuts will fall on the ground, and then the way we pick them, we have fans and stuff that'll blow all the crud out. But if you have a herd of sheep and goats in there, it's just no, we don't run them in there.
I didn't think about that at all.
Then two, they also will eat the trees. I mean, my sheep got out, and we have this new planting of trees. My dad wasn't very happy about that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I never considered that, but of course, if the nuts are falling on the ground, you can't contaminate them with the manure, because they're not going to be cleaned or anything before you eat them. You're going to crack them and eat them.
So they do go through a drying process, but it's more of they swish them around in water and throw them in a big heating machine.
Oh, they do? I didn't know that. Okay.
And then they'll crack them out. But if they're selling them in the shell, which is a thing, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good point. I didn't even think about that. Fascinating stuff. Well, Dresen, let's finish with this. I want to ask your advice for other FFA students out there. How do you, I guess, as a 7th grader, how do you look at a product and instead of assuming that the adult who made it, quote unquote, knows exactly what they're doing. How do you look at it and go, no, I can do this better? Talk to those students.
Well, I don't know. It's just gonna be more of, if you see an opportunity and it's not gonna hurt anything to take it, take it. What do you have to lose if you see something that you can change, or if you see something that you think you can do better, and it's not gonna hurt anyone, or it's not going to cost all kinds of crazy money to do it, why not take the extra 20 minutes to try it out and see if it works? All you're going to ever do the rest of, well, probably, if it's something small, it's probably not going to be the rest of your life. But for the next little while, you're probably going to think, what would have happened? What could have happened if I'd have done it? If you do it, you have the answer yourself. You figured it out. Oh, this didn't work, or cool, this is working great. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you can do it better, or you think you can do it better, and you have the opportunity, take it. It's not going to hurt anybody or yourself. And I mean, you might be looking at the next sliced bread invention if you do it.
Very good. Yeah, the next sliced bread, next sliced cheese, all those ones that have come up. Dresen, this has been very, very fun. I've learned a ton. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing this today.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great experience, opportunity.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody, and thank you to Dresen Ferschweiler for coming on the Off-Farm Income Podcast and sharing that great information, great stories with us today. I really enjoyed that. And hey, please follow us. Please subscribe. Click that button right here and subscribe to us on YouTube. We would very much love having you as a subscriber, so you can get all of our different videos and connect with us on social media. You can find us over on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. It's all under the title Off-Farm Income, and we would love to connect with you at all of those places. And until then, everybody, as always, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.